at the edge of the old world, where land ends and the sea begins. A people dared to chase the wind. Lisbon became a harbor of departures, a harbor of tears. Families said goodbye on the docks, hoping the sea would show mercy. The world wanted spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves. Portugal needed a path to reach them, a path of its own. No desert, no middlemen. The India run was more than trade. It was a triumph of human ingenuity and a tragedy written on the ocean. Every sailor knew the truth. He might never return home, yet still they sailed. For these men, the sea was not a barrier. It was destiny. In 1498, Vasco da Gama reached Calicut. Portugal opened a new route, one that would change global history. For the first time, the ocean connected west and east. Trade no longer depended on deserts, caravans, or rival empires. Now it followed the will of the wind. By the turn of the century, King Manuel knew one thing. This could not be just a single triumph. The route had to become a system. The India run was born. They sailed in early spring, time to reach the Indian Ocean before the monsoon winds changed. Every year, fleets left Lisbon on the longest and most dangerous journey in the world, carrying Portugal's name beyond the horizon. The journey to India alone could last 6 to 8 months. Sailors, soldiers, convicts, all knew the sea might never return them, to the families crying on the docks. For pepper, cinnamon, and cloves, an entire kingdom defied death. Wind, science, and faith commanded the path. They left Lisbon's safe waters behind and chased the wind to Cape Verde, crossed to Brazil's long coast, then up through Angola and Mozambique. Steps on a path carved by wind and courage, and then the leap into the Indian Ocean, guided by the monsoons, winds deciding who would arrive and who would vanish in the blue. Beyond Goa, Portuguese influence spread across the Indian Ocean, to Ceylon, to Malacca, to the Moluccas, to the islands where the world's rarest spices were born. But the far land of Japan followed another branch of the eastern seas, a route linked to India, yet never part of the India run itself. The India run turned Portugal into one of the first global powers in history. But glory had a price. Thousands died without burial, claimed by the silent ocean. Along that route flowed wealth and influence, but also suffering. It was a road to greatness, and a road to the end for many. To reach the other side of the world, an ordinary ship was not enough. Portugal needed a giant, and they built one, the Great India Ship. And through the centuries, the route was not sailed by naus alone. Caravels, armed galleons, and later swift frigates also crossed these waters when the journey demanded it. A floating fortress of oak, sails brushing the clouds, cannons that made pirates and empires tremble. Some weighed more than 1,000 tons. They could carry the wealth of entire kingdoms in their holds. Silver and gold left Europe and returned as carpet, silk, ivory, porcelain, and the most precious treasure of all, pepper, hidden among the cargo. Enslaved people were taken from Africa, their lives chained to the fate of others. Inside the timber hull, ropes, masts, and sails created their own universe. On the high deck, the captain commanded the wind. Deep below, the carpenter fought the sea, plugging every crack where water tried to break in. The ship was the sailor's home, but the sea was the owner of the home. Navigation was science. The astrolabe pointed at the sun, the quadrant at the stars, the magnetic needle to the north, and maps so precious, they were guarded like the king's greatest secret. Artillery turned these ships into monsters of fire and gunpowder, but no weapon protected the crew from the enemies within. Hunger, fever, and fear. From afar they looked invincible. Inside they were floating prisons, with the ocean itself deciding who lived and who sank. Every plank was hope, every wave a threat, and so the voyage began. The ship strong, the men fragile, the cargo priceless, the lives cheap, because on the India run, glory always weighed more than the men who carried it. Inside each ship lived 200, 300, sometimes even more, pressed between the sky above and the sea below. Some sailed for the promise of India's riches, some to escape the gallows, others because there was nowhere else to go. But all of them knew the truth. On board, a man's life was worth less than a barrel of water. The captain major ruled in the name of the king. Below him, the ship's captain enforced every order. The pilot read the sky like the will of God. The master shouted at the wind to push the sails. Sailors climbed rigging through starless nights. Cabin boys scrubbed the deck until their hands bled. Soldiers watched every tired face with suspicion. In the darkness of the hold, the blacksmith, cooper, carpenter, and califater worked without rest. Above, the scrivener recorded the king's wealth on pages soaked with salt. The priest tried to save souls. The barber surgeon tried to save bodies with dull blades and trembling hands. And there were those who stayed silent, convicts paying for their sins through labor, and enslaved men denied the right to a future. They slept wherever they could, some beside the cannons, others in hammocks swaying like leaves in the wind. The sea never allowed rest. Water seeped through every crack. Moisture clung to skin. The smell of gunpowder mixed with fever and fear. Food was a daily battle. Hard biscuits smashed with hammers. Water stored for months, tasting like death. And when everything ran out, and it often did, they ate rat sawdust, even the leather of the sails, boiled in salt and tears. The deadliest enemy had a name: scurvy. First bleeding gums, then legs that could no longer stand, and finally the body giving up. When a man died, there was no time for farewell. A cloth, a short prayer, and the sea took him back. The ocean was the largest graveyard of the empire. To keep madness away, they looked for distraction. Secret games of dice, songs played on old guitars, improvised scenes acted out on the deck, and simple rites of faith, honoring saints and the Holy Spirit, stories of sea monsters whispered in the dark. But the captain knew too much fun could turn the ship into a powder keg. Gambling was forbidden. A single unpaid debt could spark mutiny, and a mutiny could kill them all. Discipline was absolute law. Whippings before the whole crew, chains in the black hold, and for the greatest crimes, hanging swift and merciless. In the midst of real terror, there was also the terror of the unknown. At night, the sea felt too infinite for a human heart. Mermaids calling to the desperate, comets predicting disaster, every creak of the hull a warning of the end. And still they sailed, year after year, on the longest voyage in the world, because Portugal needed India's riches, and India needed men to reach it, even if they never returned. The voyage was a dance with the wind, and the one in command was not the captain. It was the sky. After Mozambique, the Indian Ocean opened. A vast blue desert, no mountains, no islands to guide the eye. Men trusted only the hidden North Star, the burning sun over the deck, and the hope that the monsoon winds would carry them to Goa. If they missed the right season, death arrived slowly. Hands torn and bleeding patched the sails. They pumped water from the hold to keep from sinking alive. The calm seas of the South Atlantic were torture. The ocean still, the sun merciless, the ship motionless, while despair kept moving. When the wind abandoned them, it was crueler than any storm. At the Cape of Storms, the ocean roared with hatred. Waves hit the bow like walls. Winds ripped the sails like paper. The deck turned into a battlefield where only the strongest remained standing. Many ships vanished there without a single witness, only drifting wood and silence. Then came the danger with a face. Pirates and corsairs in the Mozambique Channel, ambushing exhausted ships with men too weak to fight. And there was the invisible enemy along the African coasts, malaria and fever striking sailors down before they even sighted India. The India Run meant this: 2 oceans joined by suffering, 3 continents linked by courage. Stops became essential to stay alive, with Kilimanjaro watching from afar. Mozambique and Mombasa appeared as brief salvation, ports where the sick tried to breathe, where they loaded fresh water and buried those who failed to survive. Some men, seeing what the sea did to the human body, begged to remain on land. Better to die on earth than drown in fear. But those who continued knew, if they survived the Indian Ocean, the destination had a name worth all that torment. India, the land of spices, the land of promise. When they finally saw Goa, men cried like those born again, not because they had reached India, but because they had survived the sea. On the docks, the scent of pepper blended with cinnamon and nutmeg. Merchants fought for every sack of spice, as if they were fighting for fragments of the future. And the future was there, in each tiny black grain, worth more than gold. Tide rose from Lisbon, uniting worlds across the oceans, reaching toward the rising sun. But every glory casts a shadow. The wealth shining in Lisbon's chests was paid with the bodies that fell in the Indian Ocean, paid also with enslaved lives, shipped like cargo, silent foundations of an empire, growing far too fast. The India Run built palaces, dug graves, with the same determination. In the 17th century, new enemies appeared on the horizon, the Dutch and the English, with faster ships, stronger cannons, and fewer scruples. One by one, the ports that once flew Portugal's flag fell into foreign hands, and the route that had made Portugal mighty began to shrink, to fade with time and with trade, until in 1869, a strike that came not from the sea, but from the land, ended the India Run forever. The Suez Canal opened, the Mediterranean joined to the Red Sea, and the world no longer needed to round Africa's storms. The route that once united continents stepped out of the present and into history, yet its legacy remains in the fortresses still standing, against the winds of Diu and Cochin, in the flavor of the world itself, and in the memory of a people who dared to defy the impossible. For more than 3 centuries, the ocean was the road Portugal chose to reach the future, and on that road, thousands of men disappeared, so the world could change. Today, no caravels cut across the Indian Ocean. No masts rise to challenge the sky. Yet in the silence of the waves, memory remains. It remains in the pepper on our tables, in voices far from Lisbon, in the names carved into fortresses forgotten by time. It remains in courage. It remains in the price paid. The India Run was never just trade. It proved that mankind, fragile and mortal, dares to face the infinite, when hope is worth more than life. And when we look at the sea, we still see the shadows of ships that left and never returned, still sailing unseen, forever against the wind of longing. Its history traveled on the waves, and the sea kept every tear, every victory, every life that dared to challenge the unknown. As long as there is an ocean, the India Run will not end, because certain deeds do not belong to the past. They belong to eternity,